presentation. So just like the previous presentation in the morning session, we developed this project for within the subject of interaction design as a university project, where the motto and the main focus was the use of new technologies and its impact and the way it changes society. So within this motto, we as a group decided that we wanted to address the theme of artificial intelligence. As a definition, artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines. In other words, their ability to rationalize like the human brain and mimic our actions. So as we were doing research on this subject, we came across a lot of negative aspects on it, such as data surveillance, invasion of privacy and security, bias-related issues, and among others, which make some of the major issues of this type of technology. So with this, we decided that we wanted to make something different. We wanted to develop a project with a more positive approach. So we started thinking of a project that would have a more inclusive approach and something more pragmatical that could be of real use to someone. Here we decided to create our concept. It focuses on the visually impaired community as our target audience and their lack of access to written information. So if we think about it, we are constantly being presented with written information, whether it be on the streets, street signs, books, product labels, and if we think that visually impaired are constantly deprived from this written information, and of course there are braille translations in products and in books, but braille is the universal alphabetic writing system for blind people, and these are very few compared to the information that visually impaired people don't have. So with this, we decided that we wanted to create a project that would provide this community the access to this information. Basically, our concept is a device that uses artificial intelligence to translate automatically written information into braille. As we did research on braille and how blind people read, we started making our first sketches, as you can see here. We also got in contact with ACAPO, which is the Portuguese Association for Blind and Amblyopic People, which gave us a better insight on this subject. Then we finally got to our final prototype and the final design and visual of our device. We made two different models, black and white, and we also decided to name it TOD, T-O-D, which backwards means dot, which is the fundamental units of the braille system. When it comes to functionality, the device is very simple and very intuitive to use. The user inserts the device on the tip of his finger through this finger strap. Then there is a small scanner on the base that scans the written information, and through this rotating braille reproduction system, the device translates the information and simulates the movement of the finger, like you can see on this animation. Then we made a 3D printed model to have a bit of a notion how the real scale of the device would be. As you can see, it's very small, it's practical, and this is precisely what we wanted on this project. We wanted a simple, practical device that could be used on a daily basis by visually impaired people. We also designed the packaging for the two different versions, which comes with a wireless charger and instructions also translated into braille. And now we wanted to show you our website. Let me just share the screen. Okay, our website is also very simple and very intuitive. We included a button, an audio button for the community in question, so that they can navigate and listen to the description of the website and what it contains. The website only has 3 pages. The first one is the home page, where we have the basic information about the product, how it works, its different components, and also some images of the 3D model. Then we have an about page with a short text describing the concept and how this project started. And finally, we have a page where the user can buy the product, choose between the 2 versions, black and white, see the whole packaging, and also select the charger or not if they already have one. Finally, and to conclude this presentation, we wanted to show you our short teaser.
We are not getting the sound. Yeah.
You can hear?
No.
And with this, we end our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gustavo. It was really interesting. Thank you. I don't know if is there some comments or questions directly to this presentation at this point. I had like two or three questions. One is when you presented in the website the selling, it was fictional, right? It's not for sale actually, right?
Yes. This was just for academic purposes, and we made a website just to exemplify how it would be.
When you contacted the association, the blind association, did you show these results already to them? If you felt it was something that they needed actually, or?
No. When we got in contact with ACAPU, it was more in an initial phase of the project, just to understand a bit better how blind people read and how braille works. We actually never got to show the final product to the association, but it's something still open.
Yeah, that's a trajectory that can be made,
yes.
And then for crowdfunding maybe, and something will work out. So Isabel.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted you to keep explaining a little bit more or less what Pedro asked, whether this can be actually possible if you try it with visually impaired people. Because I mean, part of my family is visually impaired, and I know they're very happy with Apple in particular, because Apple make their lives much easier with a lot of accessibility devices inside the iPhone. And I don't see it so crazy. I mean, I see it very possible. I don't know if maybe you would need to implement something based on their own experience, but well, it's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we wanted to make this something bigger, or maybe if it was possible to implement it and create the device. But when we got in contact with Akapu, they were very useful, more in the sense of how visually impaired people read and what it takes to them to understand what is written on the paper. And we got in contact with them more for the how can I say this?
As a research, right?
Exactly, yes. So to build and to design the device itself, if it is possible and if it works as we think it should work. We are not certain because we never tried it, and it's not even real, right?
Yeah, and I imagine, as Isabel was saying, Apple products nowadays have these reading capabilities that maybe emulate also these, that they translate directly text to voice. Some applications should be working like this already, I imagine. I don't know.
Yes, so, there are some applications. So.
Yeah, so great. Actually, there are several studies and applications that nowadays are doing not directly reading text on paper, but they are reading the visual environment and making heat maps of this visual environment. We will have a presentation in more for the afternoon at 3:45 about this subject. There are a group of researchers. I'm telling this because just entered the Justin Hollander that will give this presentation. So it could be interesting to be around. So I don't know is there any other question for Gustavo? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting and nice. I will invite Henriques to present. I think she's around.
Yeah,
she is.
Right here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So should I start screen sharing?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Is everything good?
Yes.
Right. So then I'll start. So hello, first of all. My name is Anna, and my pronouns are she, they. I'm wearing a white shirt, and I'm speaking to you from this mildly decorated white void. So today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the dangers of a purportedly neutral approach to design. And specifically, I'll be discussing its pitfalls as they relate to gender. And I hope to make the argument that designing towards gender parity requires not a gender blind approach, but rather one which is specifically gender conscious and informed also by an approach to design which centers ethics as an explicit part of the design process. This investigation runs directly parallel to my dissertation, so I'll summarize it here as best I can. Also, right, I should introduce my credentials. Well, actually, I'm just about to turn in the dissertation and officially complete my master's in communication design here at the Lisbon School of Fine Arts, and hopefully now pursue a PhD on the subject. So yeah, and to begin, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the relationship between design and ethics. So design as a process made up of a set of choices aimed at a specific desired outcome, it's invariably guided by the values and assumptions we hold, right? Those we prefer, which are themselves based on what we consider to be legitimate knowledge. And this is reflected in the way we think, what we think about the values we prioritize, and inevitably also in those that we reproduce. And this may be done more or less consciously, but it is unavoidable. So if all design things are a product of an intended purpose, material reconfigurations, which is a term I'm borrowing from Echekanli's brilliant work, these reconfigurations, they require intentionality. They require a desire to configure and a vision as to how. And, you know, well, this is in its very essence an ethical matter, right? The question of which design solution is the best is at its core a question of which is the best choice or set of choices. So now the issue then becomes, what do we define as best? And this is not a trivial question. It's in fact, it's a very complicated one, but let's just narrow it down to what values do we choose to prioritize? You know, because when we design, we communicate meaning through the decisions we make, right? And the values we choose to reproduce. As said, Judith Hadfield, designs are things with attitudes, and they're capable of ethical and political agency. So in choosing which values to reproduce, we must be cognizant of what they communicate. Design is political. It expresses the designer's priorities, which can align or not with the hegemonic ethics and epistemologies in detriment of all that is not valued within them. And this matters because designing according to any particular value system communicates that one places value on that system. And design, as I hope we're all well aware, is heavily biased in favor of Euro and androcentric hegemonies, thereby neglecting marginalized epistemologies as a direct consequence. We even saw this a little bit today with the playground presentation this morning. So this is reflective of the limitations of the design institution and inevitably influences not just which design is practiced and thus reproduced, but also the socio-political institutions and systems that are seen as legitimate, and hence those that we should emulate and aspire to. So in this way, hegemony is by definition ignorance. It's blind to any alternative knowledge to what we think is known and hold as legitimate. And even worse, it doesn't know what it doesn't know, because it assumes that what is worthy of being known is already known. So the idea of a neutral design is paradoxical. It cannot exist, and a purportedly neutral approach to design is anything but. What it is blind, you know, blind to all the intersecting systems of oppression which exist at the margins of what is hegemonic. Such as the ones described in seminal works by Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, and here depicted visually by Catherine Pauli Morgan. So even with the best of intentions, one can perpetuate these oppressive systems unknowingly, and thus also the oppression they communicate. This is the problem with neutral design, right? It ignores the needs of those whose epistemologies are not valued, and thereby produces inadequate design solutions biased in favor of hegemonic priorities. You know, those are on the domination half of the diagram. Specifically, as it relates to gender parity, we see this kind of gender neutral approach everywhere in urban planning and UX design, but it remains oblivious to the crucial difference between designing equally and designing for equality. So here, I'd like to take a look at bathrooms as a specific case study of this very issue. So I'd like to take a small poll. Let's say you went to a concert or to see a movie. How many of you who use public women's bathrooms have had to wait in line while the men get to just go in and out without any waiting time? I guess for the sake of time, let's maybe use the chat. I don't really know how relaxed we are time-wise, so yeah.
We are okay, but you could ask everyone to raise their hand
sure, raise your hands, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I certainly have, and I'm sure many of you have too. And you know, why is that? There's a tendency here to blame women, you know, that just take longer and nothing we can do about it. But actually, there are definitely some things we could do about it. It's a design issue, specifically one born out of exactly this inherited hegemony of male-focused design. And at first glance, it may seem fair to provide equal space to both female and male public bathrooms. And this is indeed, it's how it's been done historically. This equal division of floor space has even become embedded as a provision in numerous plumbing and sanitation codes. But if a men's bathroom has both stalls and urinals, the number of people who can use it at the same time is far greater per square meter of floor space compared to the women's bathroom. And just like that, suddenly equal floor space is not so equal after all. But even if male and female bathrooms had an equal number of stalls, the problem still wouldn't go away. Women take up to 2.3 times longer than men to use the toilet. They also make up the majority of the elderly and the disabled, two groups which tend to need more time in the bathroom. Women are also more likely to be providing care for others, such as children or disabled and older people. Then there's also the 20 to 25% of women of childbearing age who might be on their period and needing to change a tampon or sanitary pad. And also, women tend to require more trips to the bathroom. Pregnancy significantly reduces bladder capacity, and women are around 8 times more likely to suffer from urinary tract infections. Now, considering all of this, I hope it's clear that this neutral approach to supposed equality is woefully inadequate. So what's the solution here? You know, on the face of it, it seems rather obvious, right? Just make women's bathrooms bigger and add more stalls. Except not so fast. So this blanket solution is still lacking significant context, namely who we are including within the label of womanhood. Jack Halberstam actually talks about this in his book, Female Masculinity, how the bathroom has become a place for policing gender, both legally and socially. He argues that even having separate bathrooms for different genders is a problem, given that those who do not clearly fall in either category have a very hard time accessing and using public bathrooms without having to deal with harassment of some sort. So queer and trans exclusionary discourse around bathrooms does very little to nothing at all to improve toilet access for the majority, but it does put trans and gender non-conforming individuals at greater risk of violence when using these spaces. Dark-skinned women in particular are also most often at the tail end of such harassment due to racist and normative ideas regarding femininity. And all of this contributes to a pretty dangerous and erroneous homogenization of womanhood. So is desegregating bathrooms the answer here? Actually, maybe. So research has shown that even though desegregating bathrooms is usually framed as an accommodation for trans or gender non-conforming people, average waiting times for women would decrease, and those for men would either not be affected at all or would increase only slightly. But there are still a few issues to contend with here, and one of the most important is, again, the potential for violence and harassment. And here, I want to be very clear. I do not mean violence on the part of trans people. Statistics have repeatedly shown that cis men are the overwhelming perpetrators. I also don't mean to imply that all men do this, of course, nor that they are the only ones that do, but the fact that a non-insignificant portion does is something that we cannot ignore, and desegregating bathrooms would indeed leave women and queer people more vulnerable to harassment. So in order to do this, some architectural and social design strategies would need to be developed to combat the issue. And here, I'm actually happy to say that there is some research being done. Some of these strategies could include, for example, a single open space with individual ceiling to floor stalls instead of a single closed one. But even with all the right provisions, there is still one thing that these gender segregated bathrooms could never do, and that is to provide a safe space from external harassment, like bathrooms tend to be, for example, in nightclubs. So solutions are never really simple, right? Blanket solutions are never broadly applicable because different people have different needs in different places. Default measures will always ignore the needs of some, and most often of those with the least political agency. You know, when we design neutral or ideal systems that use ignorance to set the boundaries of what is relevant, we inevitably restrict those boundaries to the limits of our own knowledge. This is why an approach that centers ethics as an integral part of the design process is so important. If we don't question the values, intentions, and outcomes underlying the design choices that we make, we're failing to act as ethical agents and become complicit in a design which perpetuates and communicates oppression, and thereby decreases access to public spaces. So you see, ethics, it's not optional. It's already part of the design process, whether implicit or explicit. Ethical implications, they abound in the design choices we decide to make. The problem is that we are largely not considering them when it matters, and that is before the damage is done. Our interactions with the world, the way we perceive it, others, and even ourselves is mediated by a design that is decidedly not neutral. It always embodies and communicates meaning, and this can happen with our knowledge and consent or with our ignorance and negligence. Questions like which values do we want to reproduce? Will they maximize the amount of good, or are we fulfilling our duties as designers and ethical agents? They all have answers with profoundly political implications. And the answers we give them have as much to do with what we choose to prioritize as with what we choose to neglect. As designers, we're accountable to the public for whom we design, and as such, we must act with the oath responsibility. That is a responsibility to include rather than exclude. Designing for equality, for accessibility, as well as usability, requires the designer to act as an ethical agent, responsibly, consciously, and knowingly. So we see then that designing towards gender parity cannot be oblivious to intersecting issues of gender. It just doesn't really work. Any design approach that is not thorough in its intentionality will only enforce solutions that are exclusionary and communicate oppressions in ways we are blind to. This is why, rather than a gender-blind approach to design, what is required instead is one that is specifically gender-conscious, aware of these issues in all their intersecting forms. And this is absolutely a feminist issue as well as one of accessibility. So, as a small little conclusion, I'd just like to stress that designing for gender parity is not really a question of resources or capability. What it is it's really a question of priorities. And as it stands, we simply are not prioritizing women or gender non-conforming individuals. Women and queer people have just as much right to adequate public spaces and resources as anyone else. So we must stop excluding them, us, by design. Ethical deliberation matters. Our choices matter, especially the ones we don't make. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Very good, Anna. Thank you so much.
Stop screen sharing.
Yeah, that was many information and very relevant information there. I'm still digesting. So, and I imagine that the rest of the people are also, but well, as you know, as always, I invite to use this opportunity to question Anna and to comment if needed, and raise your hand or just step in. Negar, please.
Oh, yeah. Hi. I can't hear you though.
Yeah, you are with the sound thing again. Thank you.
It's fine.
Sure, right. Yeah. Yeah, she's writing, so.
Well, that's a very broad question. I would say that it's always contingent, right? It's always contingent to the needs of any specific locus. So I'm thinking like in India, for example, I read in my research that India actually has a very accentuated sanitation access to sanitation problem. So women actually prefer to relieve themselves in open fields, which are close to where they are, rather than walk the distance to use a specific facility for whatever they need. And this is because there's a very severe problem with sexual assault and harassment, and in this way, you know, we have to be conscious of this specific context when designing, you know, when devising design solutions. So I don't think isn't segregated design a reproduction of the binary paradigm? I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. It's just I'm just cautious about you know, introducing this as a blanket solution everywhere, because it might ignore specific needs. That's all. So I absolutely agree with you. I'm very conscious of that issue, and at least where I live, I see it as a problem, and I hope to change it. But I don't think we can apply the same standards everywhere all the time. So that's what I mean by an approach that centers ethics. So you have to be conscious of the specific needs, of the contingency that every design solution requires, because, like I said, different people have different needs in different places. So I couldn't answer that question broadly because there is no one solution.
Yeah, actually, your presentation was a little bit about that also, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no
absolutely
general.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's why ethics. My proposal is to center ethics as an integral and explicit part of the design process. That is because exactly this. We can't really ignore anyone's needs. So we have to inform our design decisions very thoroughly and also very carefully.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone more have any comments, any question at this point. I think what you are putting in evidence here, it's the let's say the unsolved big question of design, because
of course,
when you mass produce, when you know, design comes out of industrialization, you know, industrial age and so on, and giving access to all the goods to a major number of people, and gaining this not arts and crafts thing, but more design, you know, something that's for the factory to produce for everyone. And to find this form that fits everyone usually leaves lots of problems behind, right? And
yeah, and also, sorry.
Go.
No, I was just I was remembering that, you know, to me in my investigation and a big part of my dissertation, design isn't just specific concrete solutions. It's also reconfiguration. It's material reconfiguration. So there's actually a lot of social design solutions we could implement to try to implement design solutions that view gender without this binary distinction. And I'm reminded, for example, of a study conducted that it was trying to figure out ways to make desegregated bathrooms work and make them be hygienic and safe and all of that. And I'm reminded of this one experiment they conducted to try to socially socially push men to sit down when they pee, because it's a convention. It's absolutely a social convention that men stand up to pee, and actually women stand up to pee in some cultures. So this is absolutely a design convention, and there are ways we could design this out of existence or change it and transform it into ways that work better for everyone.
Yeah, I just want to point that also Justin shared here in the chat a book reference.
Yeah, I was in the middle of thanking him and then I got caught up in my answer, but thank you very much, Justin. I'll absolutely check it out.
Yeah.
I don't know how well we are on time, but I'm reminded of yesterday with such a heavy focus on graffiti and street art. There's another example I mentioned in the article that is focused in Malmö in Sweden, and this was in 2010, and they were trying to find a public park design that, well, they implemented public spaces for local youth to do skating, climbing, and graffiti. And what they found is that girls were not using the space. It was only boys. And so luckily they decided to investigate. They decided to find out why. And they did that by asking girls directly what they wanted. Why weren't they using the space? And they actually found out that by implementing a few small design decisions, such as, well-lit spaces, also sectioned spaces, not one open space, but sectioned spaces with different sized areas and on different height levels, actually worked the best to integrate girls in the same space that boys were essentially colonizing, not really their fault, but it was designed that way. And this is absolutely something, it's a design issue, like I said.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, I think we have already had some contributions in our journals that address, of course, the gender question, but also more specifically women in public space, specifically at night time, and all these conditions, the life in the city. So, but yeah, it's a broad theme. Thank you for bringing this. I think if there's no more comments or questions at this point, you can use also the chat for placing them. And I thank you again, Anna, for this contribution. Very interesting. Thank you. So we pass on to the next presentation. Let me hear. Okay. So Mariana Ramos, are you around, Mariana? No, Mariana is not around. So, okay. I think she's not. She could be with another name or something, but she's not, or someone from her part. Okay, so we do not have Mariana. We have here a blank spot. So I will suggest that we do a longer break at this point, and we get back at 3:15. Is it good for all? I hope. Yeah. Okay, because Mariana she's not around, and we have then a 15-minute break, and then we will have Jan. Okay. So I think that will be the best. So if everyone agrees, it's like that. So we'll meet again at 3:15. Okay. Okay. So talk soon. I will just close my window and keep the arrangement for 3:15. Okay. Talk soon. Thank you, Anna. Bye.